I have said on this show, and I've said repeatedly, that I am not necessarily someone I'm not necessarily as big of an M fan as a lot of people are, or as most people would expect a white hip hop fan to be. I liked him. I'll tell you what, like I was rapping when Eminem came out, so I was a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit jealous that that was the first white rapper that blew up. I like what he does, but I'm going on record what I think about his content, what he chooses to talk about. If I put that to the side, lyrical skill, I don't think I can debate that he's in the top 10 at the very least. And I say very least at the top 10. Top 5, probably. I'd hear an argument for top 3. But lyrical skill, you tell me, man. I mean, is there much he can't do when it comes to lyrics?
No. And I say no aggressively because I've never seen another rapper poke fun at being as good of a rapper as he is, lyrically, musically. He chooses to do things at his own expense just to prove how good he can rhyme, downgrading and degrading. I went on record. We talked about him when we reviewed his album a few months back, and there was a bar in his second album, which is my favorite Eminem album. It's a song called "I Never Knew," and he says, "Read up on how I used to get beat up, Pete on be on free lunch and change school every 3 months." Like as Joe, as a bar setup, is that I don't think I'd have told that. Like there's just some things I think I'd have held. But that's the pure genius of him.
On
That
on all of his albums, I think I could take all of the bangers out of all of his albums and make one complete album with it of just straight bangers. And that might be putting it a little bit, that might be a little bit too
yeah,
strong for some people, but that's the way I feel.
I think you're right. I think they're outside of the Marshall Mathers LP, and I've said this on record myself. I don't believe there's another no skip Eminem album. I believe there are several worth the purchase Eminem album, but I don't believe that there's another no skip Eminem album.
This is somewhat the same, but a different and I think a good question. If we're gonna put him, if people wanna put him in the God tier in rap, then we're putting you up against guys like Rakim, like Black Thought. I'm just gonna throw out names like Biggie, Tupac, Method Man, Jadakiss, Nas, KRS, Big Daddy Kane. Like we are throwing your name up there with those guys. How does his catalog stack up against them?
It's weird because
LL, I forgot LL.
oh yeah, it's weird when you pose it that way because on one hand, if you look at several of the God tier artists that we mentioned, excluding maybe J and L, Eminem sits in a weird place because a lot of the other God tier artists have a hip hop cultural God tiered catalog, but not a commercial one. If that makes sense. Hip hop's Eminem sits in a weird spot because he sits in a spot like J, like L, album wise, sales wise, but he sits in the other side, or he doesn't quite sit on the other side. If that makes sense. So he kind of
Yeah.
sits in a weird middle spot. Like he has individually, he has several songs that fit over there with the Black Thoughts and the Rakims. He just did a song with LL, the Murdergram Deuce, which is, first of all, the fact that LL chose that song to let him get on lets you know his opinion of him. And I guess that's kind of where I get head scratched about his place is because I think, and y'all, I know I claim to be a low budget historian of hip hop because I got this salt and pepper, right? But I think out of all the names that we listed, with the exception of KRS-One, every other one of them publicly has praised him as a lyricist, has praised him lyrically.
He said, if Eminem were black, he'd be Muhammad Ali. And that made me think because I thought that was a really sharp quote because Rakim is a very smart man. And Rakim doesn't, especially with words, Rakim does not say things to just say them. And that was a phrase that needed unpacking for me. And as I unpacked it, what I came up with was that his being white is a double-edged sword for him.
Mhm.
Definitely one of the main reasons we're having this discussion about him right now, but also one of the main reasons that I can't say that he is the best lyricist ever. At the same time, his whiteness works in that way. It's worked to help him and it's worked to hurt him. And he's talked about that in his songs too. Because I feel like if Eminem were black, there are already guys who do what he does. And we would automatically put him with them, and the conversation would be completely different than what it is right now.
Right.
Because if he were black, then he would be right there with Black Thought, Rakim, and KRS, everybody else that we named on that list. He would be mixed in with them, and he wouldn't stand out because of his white. So I think that's the reason we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
But also to unfortunately for him, it's also the reason why I can't put him at the top of it either. So I wanted to just let that out, just let that out and see what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And you're right on. I remember hearing that quote from Rakim, and you and I have talked about that quote. And it the first thing I thought about was his verse on the Easy Meal track. Him and Easy Meal, he was like, "Me being white's been good to me," right? You know, but let me be clear. It's me being white is not the reason why I'm top five. Like I get that. Like I know I get to be top five, but it's the reason you can't put me at one.
Right.
And I struggle with that because one, I don't believe he's one.